What is up, guys? So, in this episode here, we're going to be getting into MongoDB. Okay, so in the previous episode, we installed MongoDB using Homebrew. Now, in this episode, we're going to be doing the MongoDB schema, creating our schemas using the notes and the users. Okay, and then we're going to be adding those relationships within the schema. And then we're going to, I didn't put it on here, but we're going to be adding those relationships also to our GraphQL, and then we're going to be adding an additional mutation to it. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing in this episode. All right, so let's get started with that. I have my EverNote folder, EverNote project pulled up. Okay, so what we got to do now is the first thing we got to do is that we got to create our MongoDB schema. So we got to create some folders for that. We got to create the folder for models. Okay, so this is going to hold all of our DB schemas that we're going to create. Okay, so we're going to create a notes.js. Should I spelled that right? Okay, yeah, I did. And then we're going to create a users.js. Okay, and now the user is going to be the user that registered or logged in and all that. Okay, and then our notes is going to be what our notes are. Alright, so to get started with this schema here, we're going to include the Mongoose because we're going to be using Mongoose to help us build out this schema in our database. So we're going to get Mongoose. I'm going to grab that. Okay. Oh, wait. Mongoose. Like that. And then what we're going to do is that we're going to grab the schema class right out of Mongoose so we can use it. So we'll just store that in a variable. So schema equals the mongoose.schema. Alright. And then right here, what we're going to do is going to create notes schema. Okay. And then we're going to do const notes. We're going to store all this schema in a variable of notes, variable called notes, right? And then we're going to create our schema. So we're going to do new, do the keyword new, and then schema, which is referencing this right here. Okay. We invoke that, and now we have to, as you can see, this little helper text that pops up saying what schema, saying the values that schema takes in. So it takes in the schema definition. So we got to define that. We got to define what notes fields that is going to have. In case that sounds confusing, what fields that notes are going to have. That's what we basically got to do, right? So we got to describe it, right? So we're going to have the same fields as we do in our GraphQL. So we're going to have all of these fields, okay? Because these are what's used in the GraphQL. And then we're going to use the same fields in our database schema, okay? So we got title, that was a string. Wait. Like this. Type, and then do string. Then that is required. We're going to require that field there. And then we got content. We named it content, and that's going to be type of string. Oh, there we go. And that's required as well. So let's put that in there. All right. And then we had image, which is a type of string. Now the image doesn't have to be required because, you know, when a user creates a note, they don't necessarily have to put an image in there. So we don't have to require that. That's optional. And then now we're getting into the relationships part, okay? So the notes, each note that you create is going to be associated with a user. Okay, so if a user signs in, that user that signs in have all the notes that they create. Okay, so this specific note belongs to a user. So we're going to make that connection. Now the user is going to be referencing this user model that we create in a second. So we're going to do user creator. That's what we're going to call it, okay? Now this user creator is going to be type of the object ID, okay? This is going to be basically, you know how you create a note and then you get the ID automatically from MongoDB? That's basically what this type is going to be, that ID, right? Now, the only way we can access that ID is that we go schema.types, and then we'll tell it that it's going to be an object ID right there, okay? Now, we're telling what the user creator is going to be, right? And then we make a reference to this user part that we're going to create, right? So in order to connect models together like this, we do ref, and then we do the ref is going to be a string, and then whatever it's referencing in the other models. So whichever one it's referencing. So we're referencing our users, because each node is going to have a user that's associated to it, okay? So we're referencing our user, all right? Now, let's go ahead and export this. So, module, we're exporting it so we can use this in different files, right? So we're going to export the Mongoose. Mongoose has access to the model. So we're about to create a model in Mongoose, in our MongoDB basically. We're about to create a model. We got to give it a name. Notes, because this is what this schema is. So notes, and then what schema is it referencing? It's referencing our notes schema that's right here. So we do notes. Okay, so that's the name of the model. This is the schema that it's going by. It's going by our schema that we just created, okay? Now let's do that same thing with the users, and then you'll be able to see like how it's connected, all right? So we're going to copy this, and we're going to go over here, and we're going to copy that there, and then we're going to change some things around. Instead of notes, it's going to be users. So, and then instead of title and all that stuff, it's going to be username. Now I'm referencing the same thing we have on our schema. Let me get that server out of there. On our schema. Oh no, I didn't create it yet. Sorry, I'm ahead of myself. Okay, so the users is gonna have a username. It's gonna have an email. And it's gonna have a password. Now the username is basically for registering. Like when you register an account, you put in the username, but when you log in, we're only going to care about the email and the password. But like I said, the username is for registering, okay? Now they're all going to be the same type. They're all strings. The password is required. Put that back in there. It's true, like that. All right. Now I'm going to cross that off because that doesn't apply there. We're going to change this around. Make this user. The model that we name it is going to be new user. Probably with an S. Okay, yeah. I'd add it with an S because I added notes with an S. So, and then what schema is this user's referencing? The user schema that we just did. This right here. Okay, that's the name. This is what it's referencing. Okay. All right. Now this connection. Now the users are going to have, each user that signs up, of course, is going to be different. So each user that signs up is going to have their own array of notes that they created in our app. Okay, so how do we make that connection? So the users is going to have the notes they created. So we're going to call this created notes, right? And that's going to be a type of array. Okay, well, it's going to be an array. Okay, now that array can have many different data types in it. It can be array of strings, array of, integers and all that stuff, right? So we have to specify what type of data is going to be in this array. Okay. Now, it's not saying that it's going to be an array and of objects. That's not what it's saying. It's saying what type of data is going to be in this array. So we're going to say type. The type of data that's going to be in this array is the notes that we created. The IDs of the notes that we created is going to be the type of this created notes. Okay. Now, if that seems fuzzy, I'm going to show you in a second. So type is going to be I think it's schema, I'm not mistaken. Yeah, schema types, object ID, like that. And then it's going to be a, yeah, so IDs, right? And then we're going to make a ref to reference the connection between the users and the notes. So the reference is going to be to the notes, okay? So this ID here is referencing the note ID that we created, okay? So we called it notes, right? Yeah, okay. We called it notes, right? So basically what this looks like, if this, I say like we had an ID, right? I'm not gonna put it there, but say like we this note had an ID of like 1 2 3, you know, something like that, right? Say this is equal to the note's ID, right? So here in the users, that's gonna be this ID. So this what this looks like visually is created notes is gonna be an array. This is what it looked like visually, an array of that ID. Okay. Okay, so if this one user makes like 3 notes that have different IDs, it's going to be listed here. Okay, that's the note ID for this one. And then if we was to create another one, it'll be, you know, a note ID for another one. That's another note ID and all that stuff, okay? So that's how it's going to be connected, okay? Don't worry if that seems fuzzy. We're going to I'm going to explain that again in the next episode so you guys can like grasp what is going on. So that's how we connected the notes and the users, right? And basically the user creator is whatever the user that you create, whatever ID that Mongo gives you back for the user. Say like the user is, you know, that you have a user with this ID, and then a note that you create for that user is going to be whatever this is, basically. You know, it's gonna look like that. Like that's gonna be the object because it belongs to this user. Okay. See, this user, you know, it created this ID, so it belongs to that. So yeah, it might seem a little fuzzy, but don't worry, we'll get into that once we get deeper into it. Alright, so that's creating the connections of it. Now the next thing we got to do is that we got to make these connections within GraphQL because GraphQL doesn't know the connections whatsoever. Okay, so in GraphQL, we got to start off with the note, right? So we said it has to be the same as the database. So we said the note has a user creator object, right? So this is what we got to add. This is another field that we have to add in here. So we'll say the note has all of these fields plus the user creator. Okay. And that's going to return a what? This returns what? It's a type of ID, but that ID belongs to the whole user. Okay. The ID represents this whole user. So it should return a user. Like this. Okay. Now we haven't defined what that looks like here, so we need to do that so we can see it. So that user creator should give us an object with a user, which we're about to create right here, right? And then we have to make sure it has the same fields as our schema here: username, email, password, and creating notes, right? So, of course, the ID. And I made it underscore ID because that's how MongoDB does their IDs. They do underscore first. So I'm just copying what they did, so it could be the same. Okay. So it has a username, username, which type of string. Then you got the email, type string. I know I made that wrong. Password, type string. Okay. So that's the user. So the user creator is going to return this user for whatever notes they created. Okay. Now the other connection is the users, right? So the users has all of this, and then they have created notes. Okay. So created notes is going to be a type. What do we say that it was? A type an array with IDs, right? So it's going to be an array. Sorry about that. It's going to be an array of notes that they created. Okay. So note. It's going to be an array of objects of notes. Okay. So it's going to be an array of this. Oh, sorry. It's going to be an array of this object right here. Okay. That's what it's going to be an array of. All right. So, now that we got that going, now we have to, the last thing we need to do is to create that mutation, which is to create user mutation, okay? So we got to create a user, because we're creating notes. Now we got to create a user. So we're going to create user, and it's going to have a user input, and that's going to be the value of whatever input we are about to create. So we're going to say input. We can name this input whatever we like. So I'm going to say user input. I made it lowercase to not confuse myself with this. And then when we create this user, basically what text fields that we want to input in there, we're going to use the username. That's basically all this input does, is tell you what text fields to use. So string, then the email, type string, and the password, type string. So when we create, sorry about that, God, my throat is cracking. So when we create this user, we gotta put in these fields and the values of whatever we want to create this user. Okay, that's basically what it's saying here. So we make sure the value of this is gonna be this here. Okay, so let me copy that. Is this. All right. Now when we create this user, what is it gonna return? It's gonna return that user that we just created. Right? So it should return this, because this is what we're creating. We're creating this. We don't have to create this, because that's going to come later. We don't have to manually create that. We're just creating all of this. So it should give us back a user that we just created. Okay? Alright? So, and then in the next episode, we'll work on the resolvers and getting the database and talking to the database and getting all that stuff done. We're gonna delete all this crap in the future, but that's all I want to do in this episode. I want to stop there, and if you guys haven't seen the previous episodes, if you're just now jumping in and you haven't seen the previous episodes that I did, I got a whole playlist for you guys. It should be like 6 episodes leading up to this one, so if you guys want to check that out, if you guys are lost and just coming in, and then in the next episode, we're going to dive into getting our database talking to each other back and forth and whatnot. And that's the plan for the next episode, all right? So I will see you guys in the next one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I will see you guys in the next one. Sorry, I said that twice. Oh, yeah, before I forget, I am going to push this code up to GitHub so you guys can have access to that. And yeah, all right, I'll see you guys.